Hello and welcome back to the NBA DFS Slate Breakdown for Wednesday, January 22nd. We are here. We're going to be breaking it down. I'm your host, Tyler Wiemann, FlatTyler83 on your DFS sites and Twitter. Now, let's dive in. But before we do, come join us at LionStar. $39.99 per month gets you access to all we do, all the props, all the DFS. You get it all, one low price. Now, let's dive in and see what we can catch up here. We got an 8-game slate on both sites, and I am happy to be back to break this one down. Now, we're going to start on the point guard position on FanDuel, as we always do. Highest owned point guard. We got LaMelo Ball at 22% owned. He is 10.2K. He is in a matchup versus Memphis, which isn't the easiest one on the slate. I am actually very surprised to see him being the highest owned point guard right now. Personally, I'm not getting to a whole lot of LaMelo Ball. He's good. He has big time upside, so I don't mind if you go there. The floor is, pretty safe, pretty high, but I think he's a little bit more of a cash game play than a GPP play in this spot. I just don't think it's very likely he has one of his ceiling games. So for that reason, I'd rather fade some ownership there and go to some other guys. Fred VanVleet, 7,200. Coming in with some pretty high ownership, but in a very tough spot versus the Cavs, who are 9th overall versus the point guard spot. Now, this is something I've been saying for a little while. Jabari Smith being out gives more of a boost to Jalen Green than it does Fred VanVleet. I don't mind having a little bit of FVV, but in this matchup versus Cleveland, I just don't see myself getting to too much of him. Can he get there? Absolutely. I just think most likely outcome is he's mid-30s and he doesn't kill you, but he's definitely not winning you anything. And at high ownership, I don't really care to go there that much. Reese Beckman, 3,700. Could he run into extra minutes today? Yes. It looks like there's only going to be nine active nets. So hard to know exactly how many minutes he's going to get. He is, I would expect, him, Tyrese, and Keon to be the guards that pretty much take a majority of the minutes here today. I think we have him at 28 minutes right now. I think that's a stretch. I think he's more likely 22, 24, something like that. And, you can get there if you want. I think he's going way too high owned right now. He's a total shot in the dark. I mean, unless more news comes out. So, Ja Morant, 16% owned. You can go there if you want. He's in a decent spot. But let's get into some pivots that I like. I would rather go Cade Cunningham over LaMelo Ball. He's a little bit cheaper, has a very similar ceiling, but in a very good matchup. Now, Atlanta versus point guards is 8th overall, but huge pace-up spot with no Ivy. He gets, a boost just like LaMelo Ball with no Brandon Ingram, and then he's cheaper. I think he is more likely to hit 50 than LaMelo Ball is, and then there's still the chance of him going to 60 in a matchup versus the Hawks. So the only worry is that, you got Dyson Daniels likely on him, but what did he do in November versus them? Put up 54, and he's playing way better basketball now than he was in November. So give me some Cade. I don't mind going there. Darius Garland, 7,600. Now the big news here is there's no Evan Mobley. The biggest boost for anybody from a fantasy points per minute standpoint on the Cavs, or there's two big boosts, are Darius Garland and Jared Allen. Jared Allen is an obvious one because he's not competing with another big for rebounds and whatnot. But Darius Garland goes up to like 1.3 fantasy per minute without Mobley on the court. So I think he's in an excellent spot to have a game versus the Rockets, even though the Rockets aren't the easiest matchup in the world. They are 15th overall versus point guard, but down pace spot. They are decent, though, so the Cavs and the Rockets could come down to the wire, meaning, a little bit more minutes for Garland. The biggest issue I have with the Cavs and rostering Cavs is they're in so many blowouts. A lot of their starters don't play many minutes, but in close games, he does get up to 33, 34, 36 minutes. And without Mobley, there's just a little bit higher likelihood that he might get up to that range. I'm interested in Garland. Next, Trae Young, 9,400. He's been playing really well lately, has had multiple 50 burgers in, the last range. We're in a game that has a 234 total. Detroit's not, excellent versus the point guard. They're around league average. I think this is a good spot to go with some Trae. I don't mind getting a little bit of him. And then James Harden, 8,700 versus the Celtics. There's, two spots you want to attack the Celtics generally, and that is maybe a forward spot and then a point guard spot. And Harden is the point guard. There's also no Zubac, so he gets a little bit of a boost from that. And if there's any chance the Clippers have to stay into this game, either Powell or Harden need to get scorching hot. So I don't mind having some Harden in that situation. And if that's the case, then there's probably a Celtic that comes too. It's just really hard to pick the Celtic because they, have 5 different guys that they can take that can all go off. Now, getting over to point guard on DraftKings, there are only 7 games, actually 6 over here because there's no Milwaukee and Pelicans. So you got a 6-game slate over here. We still have LaMelo Ball as the highest owned. My feelings there. I don't mind if you go there. I just think there's other pivots I would like. Karis LeVert is 4K. Now, there is a chance that he slides into the starting lineup. Not sure if he does or not. But regardless, he's going to get a little extra playing time without Mobley. And with that, definitely interested in him at 4K. Big ceiling there, so I'm fine going. Anthony Edwards, 9.3K. Absolutely fine going there if you want to. I'm not personally going to get to a ton of them, but sprinkling some in is fine. He's been playing really well. It's a decent matchup. It's just the Hornets, have to keep Hornets. Dallas just has to keep up and stay into this game, which, they can. Minnesota's not been playing great. Now, getting over to shooting guard on FanDuel. We got Keon Johnson, 29% owned. He is the highest owned shooting guard. He is likely to start. He is likely to play big minutes. There's only, 9 guys for Brooklyn tonight. And in this stretch of, Brooklyn being hurt, he has a couple 30 burgers or high 30s. So he is in the realm of being played. I'm going to have a little bit. I think 29% owned is too high for him with this pricing, but I don't mind having some. I am a little bit worried about his minutes because there's been, blowouts where he ends up only playing 20 minutes or something like that. Now, the Suns haven't been good, and they haven't been good versus point guard, so maybe Brooklyn is able to stay into this game. And, we'll see about that. But I do little worry about his minutes, even with only 9 guys. Now, if his minutes are low, Beekman probably has higher minutes, so it makes him a little more interesting, or Tyrese Martin. With 9 guys, there's, a couple point guards that got to get big minutes. We're just not totally sure who it is. Desmond Bane, 7,700, 20% owned. Versus the Hornets, I'm fine going with some Bane. He's not one of the main, main attractions for me. It is a huge pace down spot, but he does have a ceiling. However, Ja Morant is back, and it definitely hurts the ceiling for him. If you want some, fine. I'm not going to tell you no on him. He's just not one of my higher owned guys. Amen Thompson, 8,100, 18% owned versus the Cavs. Look, if the Rockets stay into this game or really have a chance to win, I think Thompson needs to come with a game. So I'm absolutely fine going with him. I think Sengun is in a similar spot where he needs to come with a game, as center is one of the spots that you can really attack this Cavs team. But, solid wings that can put together steals, rebounds, assists, all that versus the Cavs can do some damage. So a little bit interested in him. And frankly, he's been extremely consistent at 40 plus as a starter. So I'm absolutely fine going there. And they're willing to throw him out there 40 minutes a game. So definitely interested in him. Dylan Brooks, I'm not really getting much of. Pivot wise, we got Tyrese Martin for 4.9K. He's in a similar situation as Keon Johnson. I'm going to have a little bit, but not going super hard. Personally, I'm going way underweight on the Nets compared to what the field is right now. And I think Martin's fine. I'm going to get some, but I'm not going to go super hard. And it's just a little bit of a leverage play over Keon Johnson for me. Norm Powell, 7,300. Look, nobody wants to play the Celtics, but if there's any chance the Clippers stay into it, it is versus Powell or with Powell or Harden. There's no Zubac, no Leonard, and possibly no Batum. So all of that kind of changes how the Clippers rotations may be. So there's definitely some news we need to kind of pay attention to for the Clippers. Powell is a guy that I'm absolutely considering. Then Nick Smith, 4,100. Personally, I don't understand why he's not going higher owned. He started the last 2 games. He's played 30 minutes and 26 minutes. I think we can count on, 28, 29 minutes for him without Brandon Powell. He's a 0.85 fantasy per minute guy without Brandon Miller. 0.85 fantasy per minute guy without him. And 4,100, even in a tough matchup, give me some. It's also a super high pace up spot. So I'm fine with going some Nick Smith and, sending it with him at very low ownership. Shooting guard on DK, Nick Smith, 3,200's just insanely cheap there. He's going to be super high owned, but it's good chalk in my opinion. Karis LeVert, 4K, 21% owned. We covered him. We covered Ant. Lou Dort, 4,500 is a bit cheap for me without their big men. He's just a way better fantasy producer, and it's a good matchup versus the Jazz, so I'm fine going there. Over to shooting guard on FanDuel, we got Keon Johnson, we got Desmond Bane, we got Amen Thompson, and then Tobias Harris, 6,200. I'm fine sprinkling in some Harris in this matchup versus the Hawks, who it's just a high-scoring game. Hawks aren't great at D, allowing overall 30th rank versus point guard, so I'm fine sprinkling a little bit of Tobias. My worry with him is always the same. There's just not a huge ceiling outcome, but he can definitely, hit that mid-30s and do enough for you to help your lineups. Pivot-wise, Terry Eason, 5,700. It is always a bit of a question. There is no Jabari Smith. They're obviously limited right now with some injuries. He played 27 minutes last game, 24 the before that. I think he ends up in that range somewhere. But he is a guy that comes off the bench and can give you 40, and he's at 5,700. So I'm going to absolutely sprinkle some in. 16% is just a little bit too low for me in this spot. I don't mind getting to, 20, 22, something like that. Jaden McDaniels, 5,400. The big thing for me is he has just been played way more minutes lately. Over the last 5 games, 36 minutes per game. Over the last 20, it's 31.4 minutes per game. His fantasy point per minute has fallen off a little bit in that span, but he's still giving you more per game. It's 28.58 has been his average over these last 5. I am absolutely fine with that average. I mean, he gets you 28, it's not going to kill you. You're going to still be in the running, but he's been showing mid-30s, even mid-40s, and it's a decent matchup versus the Mavericks, so I'm fine going there. The one thing I do want to show you, though, is he's had 2 matchups versus them this year, played 35 minutes in both, and only got 23 and 24 minutes. I don't think it means a ton, but it does scare me a little bit of having too much of Jaden, but 13% owned on our ownership is probably a little too low. And I want to talk about Dean Wade. So obviously there is no Evan Mobley. We talked about that a couple times. He's been out 2 games, played 27 minutes and 19 minutes. He's only 4,100. He does get a boost up in a fantasy per minute standpoint without Evan Mobley. But I think he can run into a few more minutes, and that's why I'm interested having some. We saw him put up a range, he had a few games here, 25, 27, 30, 27, 35, that he can produce at. Now, he's not playing that well right now, but it could come back in, for this game, and I'm fine sprinkling in some Dean Wade. Jalen Williams, 8,400 versus the Utah Jazz. The other Jalen Williams, the center Jalen Williams, is likely to not play big-time minutes. You're going to probably see some Jalen Williams at the center, and his fantasy per minute just goes through the roof in that situation with the small ball Oklahoma City Thunder lineup. So I'm absolutely fine taking some Jalen. I think he's going under-owned. A guy that can put up mid-40s or high 40s so consistently going this low-owned in a good matchup is just a little weird to me, so I'm taking some chances there. Small forward on FanDuel, we got Nick Smith, we got Asar Thompson, and Lou Dort. 4,300 for Thompson. Look, there's a big ceiling with him. He extremely good fantasy point per minute guy, but that's the issue is minutes. 23, 19, 22, 26, 20, 17. We can't count on the minutes, and it's just not likely he runs into more. I'm fine sprinkling some in, but I would not be super heavy on him when he's high owned. If he's low owned, I'm fine sprinkling in a little bit more, but not at this level. And getting over to power forward on FanDuel, we got Jaren Jackson Jr. at 8,500, 18% owned. I always am fine with some Triple J, the Block Panther versus the Hornets. It's a good spot. He has a big ceiling. I'm not hating on it. Tobias, we covered. Onyeka Okongwu, 6,500. I think he's getting a little pricey. I know he just had 3 amazing games, and now he's starting. Likely keep starting, but I think this is just a bit too high for him. I don't think he is going to be consistently a 40-plus per minute or point guy. Like that, I just don't think that's what he is. He's barely over 1 fantasy per minute guy over really the last couple years, and I don't think that just changed all of a sudden. So I think he might be going a little over-owned. Eason we covered. McDaniels we covered. Dean Wade. Williams we covered. Let's get over to power forward on DK. Tobias Harris, Asar Thompson, and KD. KD versus Brooklyn can obviously do some damage. He's 9,300. The problem for me is he doesn't hit a ceiling very often, but he's very, very consistent. I'm fine sprinkling in some KD in the hope that he has a ceiling game. I just don't necessarily think it's very likely. I think most likely outcome for him is, high 40s and doesn't kill you. You're fine with him, but he's also not winning you a GPP. So I'm going to have some. I'm not eliminating the Kevin Durant I'm getting, but 15% high. I'm not fading him because of ownership either, because he's not that high owned. So on to center on FanDuel. We got Jaren Jackson, Okongwu, Day'Ron Sharpe. Issue with Sharpe for me is just he's not going to get minutes. He plays 14, 18 minutes, maybe 20 without when Claxton's there. There's just not the ceiling for me. Alperen Sengun, 9,200, 10% owned. Look, we can absolutely attack this center spot versus Cleveland, especially without Mobley. Mobley is one of their best defenders and makes their entire defense better. I like attacking with Sengun in this spot. 9,200 is a little cheap for me. Worry here is, he typically plays 30 to 32 minutes. Now, for him to really show us, he needs to run into a couple extra minutes. Can he do that? Yeah, if he's playing well, they're going to keep him on the court. So Fine with that. All right, and now pivot time. I want to pivot to Mo Bamba, 3,900. Now, this one takes some talking through. He only played 15 minutes last start versus the Chicago Bulls. Now we got the Boston Celtics he's got to go against. The big thing for me is we have Nick Batum questionable. If Batum is out, they have nobody really to play center. They have nobody to really take more minutes from Bamba. Now, while I do not think that Bamba is going to go from 15 minutes to 28, I think it is much more likely that he gets to 22, 24, something like that. And at 3,900, Mo Bamba has the ability to block shots, rebound, and score the ball enough to put up a good score. Issue on FanDuel is you only got one center spot, and so it's, limiting some upside for you from that center spot because there are guys that can absolutely go for, 60 points at the center spot tonight. So as long as there's not a 60 burger, getting 30 from Bamba would be huge. And I think there is absolutely that chance. You just can't have somebody go for 60 at the center spot if you're only getting 30 from Bamba. So I like Bamba, but definitely watch news. If Batum is there, it's not likely Bamba is going to pick up, 10 extra minutes. If he's out, then there is that chance. With Zubac already out, where he's probably starting, 1.23 fantasy per minute guy as a starter in his one start, but he's like a 1.1 fantasy per minute guy on the season. So there is upside there. If he gets the minutes, we just need him to get the minutes, and no real clue if he's going to, but Batum being out would show a little more interest there. All right, then Mark Williams, 8K. The guy is coming off 49, 59, 55, and 41 since Nick Richards has been traded. I mean, he's getting big minutes. 30, 33, 36, and 29. He's in a good spot versus Memphis. I don't know why we wouldn't go here a little bit. I think he's going a little under-owned and has a huge ceiling when he's a 1.44 fantasy per minute guy. Now, I think 1.44 fantasy per minute is a little high for him. I think throughout the season, this will come down to more like 1.3, but that's what he's been producing right now, and I'm fine taking some shots when he's not that high owned, 8%, and he has that kind of ceiling. So, lastly, Daniel Gafford, 7,100. He obviously had that huge game versus Charlotte, huge game versus the Pelicans. His biggest thing is he needs to stay out of foul trouble. Now, we got no Derek Lively and no Dwight Powell. So, at the center position, it's him, and then, nobody really. He's going to have as many minutes as he can possibly play, and his issue is just staying out of foul trouble. If he stays out of foul trouble, he's going to go back up to 30 minutes, and he's super interesting. Now, we have him at 25.5, probably good to not have him that high, but no, there's just huge variance with his minutes. With how low owned he's getting, I think you should probably get some, just because he has been so good from a fantasy per minute guy, and now he could run into big time minutes. So absolutely interested in some Gafford, especially without Powell and Lively there. On to the center spot on DK, Mark Williams, Jalen Duran, Rudy Gobert. We covered Williams. He's high owned on DK. He's a 1K cheaper. Not surprised. Fine taking some shots there. Duran, 5,500. He has a ceiling. He's in a decent spot. He played 30 minutes the other night. And I think that is of note. However, over the last 5, still only 26 minutes a game. The last 20 is 26 minutes a game. I think most likely he's 26, 27 minutes tonight, and that's fine. However, there is some upside there if he's playing more. If he's playing 30 minutes a game, he's way too low of priced, in my opinion. I just don't think they've, made a material change to get him playing that many minutes. Rudy Gobert, 5,400. he's just not the player that he's been in seasons before. He's 8.86 fantasy point per minute guy. He's generally, or he has been, over 1 fantasy per minute guy. I don't love the spot. I just don't really love going there. I think people are going there just because of the name recognition, and he's probably priced kind of accordingly. So it is what it is. Now, that'll do it for us today, guys. Hope you guys had a good one. Good luck. Let's make some money. I'll talk to you all later. Peace.